Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AdColony webinar, Future of Gaming and Advertising. There's been quite a lot of interest in this webinar, which is really, really exciting. And I thank you for the time you've taken out of your day. I hope you're all safe out there. So first off, I want to say welcome and thank you to this awesome panel of very smart and opinionated people. Jason Tonelli from Publicis, Jamarr Mills from Essence, Brad Timmins from eGEN, and our own captain, Tom Simpson, APAC SVP here at AdColony. And this webinar is going to be a lot about a lot of the stigma around gaming, a lot of the misconceptions, and one of them are around women in gaming. So a very big part of gamers are female. In fact, 56% of mobile gamers are female. So I tried really hard to get female panelists, but unfortunately none of them could. Or wanted. So we have an all-male panel, but we really tried to get a female panel. So now we're going to get into a little conversation with the panels. See if we can get you guys on. Amazing. Hi guys, I hope you guys are doing well. And I hope that my speed talking wasn't too fast. So, I mean, yeah, Brad, first bit of fun then. So what's been your source of gaming during COVID, or have you been too busy working?
No, not at all. Always time for a bit of a game. So I'm a console player, so I play on Xbox, have done for the better part of the last 12 to 13 years.
Xbox, I knew there was something wrong with you.
Yeah, there you go. Massive Call of Duty fanboy, so the new Warzone has been really fun from a Battle Royale perspective, and playing always a lot of Overwatch too.
All right, so do you, what about your family? Does your family game?
I got a 5-year-old. I'm trying to keep her off as much as possible, but it's an inevitable having an esports business that she'll be following closely behind. And my wife to a lesser degree, but you hit it on the head before about mobile gaming with her as well.
Yeah, cool. What about you, Jamarr?
Well, I probably played a lot more Flow, which is the puzzle game, than I've done in the past year and a half. I actually didn't even realize I still had it on my phone until this time. So I definitely would say that that's gotten more use than usual, which is not typical for me as a non-gamer. Probably I fall in that category.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Hey, Jason, how are you?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Cool.
Gaming. It's gone by the wayside the last few years with kids and all.
Yeah.
I've gone more analog gaming, I would say. I've got 2- and 4-year-old boys, so I'm ready for the next series of Lego Masters. But in terms of digital gaming, I think probably more mobile stuff. So Words with Friends has come back. I found through COVID, so that's been something that's been a little bit of fun, reconnecting with probably people that are also at home. So probably more mobile stuff than in console or PC, which I am missing quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I've got a 6-year-old, and I've been kind of like, I've been waiting for 6 years because now he's old enough to be able to play FIFA and stuff. But yeah, I've really been waiting for that.
Yeah.
Tom, what about you? How are you?
I'm the plant on this panel, so I'm going to try and not say too much, and I hope I also say the right things, Lance. Otherwise, I'll trouble after this.
Oh, yeah.
I love the Words with Friends, connecting people. I think that's a really positive part of mobile gaming. I've been playing a lot of poker, a mobile gaming poker thing. I've now got a pot of $25 million. It's good, but it's not real, unfortunately. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, this question is kind of directed to all of you guys. So when I went through the presentation and showed a lot of the stats of how, gaming is really, really the dominant force. And obviously there are certain parts of gaming where you can't advertise, but there is still, somewhat of a lag in brands embracing it. And, why do you think that is? Or do you agree with that, Jason?
Oh, look, I think it's a time thing. I think you've got two or three spectrums now. I think the first thing is audience understanding. I believe is there with a lot of marketers. You speak to CMOs about gaming. You can dispel the myth of it's 18-year-old boys, like you can get rid of the myth fairly quickly with some robust statistics. So that's probably the first hurdle that you get through. Then it's the question of how. How do I get into gaming? Because you've got all this information. We've almost accelerated from think about mobile gaming, think about console gaming into esports. So all of a sudden, brands are now thinking, I need an esports team. And so how do you wind some of that back almost to go, no, you can dabble in gaming, you can speak to the right audience. Here are the usage statistics. I mean, we moved fairly quickly, probably a couple of cases, we moved fairly quickly into kind of gaming as a category through COVID with a couple of customers, some just advertising, looking for new audiences or the same audiences who have probably shifted because they're at home and trying to capitalize on usage. And then the other bit is you've probably seen, we've done some work with sporting teams. Yeah. So it's through the AFL, right? So we did some work with St Kilda Football Club through a sponsorship with Lion as well, where we've kind of started to capitalize on that as well and turned it from a traditional sports engagement to an esports engagement, which has worked really well. And we've got some really nice engagement there too.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And I saw a report saying that esport betting is up like 40x and 80% of that volume is for FIFA and 2K20 NBA. But I wanted to come back to what you said before, because that's quite interesting. So do you think that you say, you know, some brands are like, shit, esport is the thing. Let's start an esport team. And you kind of like, let's go back. Do you think it's similar to when social media came, that some people were just like, we need to be in social media, but they didn't really know what to do, but we have to be there. And then there's a big camp that's kind of like, that's not our thing at all.
It's with every media channel that you come up against, right? Which is you're going to have early adopters who are all in, right? Yeah. And that will come from either personal preference or come from people wanting to be avant-garde and try something new and different. So it just comes down to the type of marketer you've got. But it's also the agency, right? It's up to us as partners to our customers and their brands to really start to help them drive into new territories where there's active audiences. But, you know, Lance, you just ran through a heap of statistics, right? And they're an influential audience. They've got money, they're buying. You look at the e-com statistics, you know, e-commerce in the last 4 months, we've seen e-commerce accelerate to what we were predicting would have happened in 2025.
Yeah.
So we've had 5 years of e-com acceleration in the last 4 months. And when you think about that and then where gaming plays, there is absolutely this synergy between everything that's happening in the digital ecosystem for marketers. Gaming now needs to just be part of that, because now that we engage with gaming, I think there's a long road between where we were pre-COVID, where we are now, and also what recovery looks like in terms of people still social distancing and things. So gaming's still going to have a very relevant role in the channel mix moving forward.
I certainly hope so. What about you, Jamarr? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo something similar in the sense that I think for brands, it comes down to a bit more of how conscious they are of gaming, especially when we talk about gaming. It's almost similar to how we say social as a channel. Yeah. Social as a channel is actually broken up into different types of social experiences, social platforms that all serve different type of user behaviors. And similar to gaming, you have gaming that's esports, which is different and a category in itself. You have consoles and you have mobile gaming, and each of them, although have similar behaviors, are still individual platforms and individual entry points for brands to enter into. And so I think the hesitation you see is almost a bit more of being unconscious, at least for the brands that we work on, of being unconscious to gaming as opposed to being closed off to it. I think that a lot of those myths around where gaming is or the concerns have started to shift away. And now it's just more about thinking about the audience as opposed to the inventory. And so similar to social, you see that starting to play a role as to where and why brands show up in gaming, as opposed to selecting and being more conscious of that inventory specifically.
Yeah. That's quite
I might add to that, and I agree with the other guys as well. I think saying I want an esports or a gaming strategy is like saying I want a sports strategy. It's like there's badminton and then there's AFL. And I think that's kind of proliferated even further in the context of the different genres within the gaming and esports community, whether, you know, a League of Legends strategy is like talking about ping pong versus the AFL in the context of a first person shooter. A one size fits all situation is very complicated, especially when you're looking at the gaming and esports competitive set, other forms of digital attention, other forms of audience businesses that are attaining the success on a campaign on a cost per thousand or a reach and frequency objective. So I think you need to change success metrics and understandings. You can still get a hell of a lot of reach if you do it the right way, but it's about the message that you're reaching within each one of those genres and subcategories, because like literally the buying demographics and what we normally place around those audience businesses aren't necessarily the right way in. But we also recognize and understand that brands still need to get that return on investment. So it's just marrying that kind of new world success metric with old school kind of mentality at the same time. And we've done a lot of good work with that, with doing long form content on platforms like Twitch, and then cutting that down into shorter form ad units and content and boosting that out on social. So you're still hitting those reach and frequency objectives whilst getting humongous engagement on platforms like Twitch.
Yeah, it's got, as a follow-up question to that, because you know there is this debate around, you know, the gaming audience. Do you need to talk to them differently? I mean, what's your view on that? And also, you were mentioning new metrics, and that's generally quite hard to get new metrics in. And, you know, looking back when, you know, Facebook was trying to go, hey, likes, that it's all the rage, forget everything else. I mean, what are these metrics that you're talking about? Do you think we need to talk to the gaming audience differently? And specifically around sports, since, you know, Jason was saying that, you know, they're kind of really getting to esports, you know, marrying kind of what I read somewhere, it's called meat sports. Like, do you need to treat meat sports on esports platform differently? Yeah, it's a long question now all of a sudden.
No, not at all. I think, you know, a few years back, the NCAA were looking at doing college scholarships for esports and gaming talent. And all of the developers and the actual community said, we don't want to be anything like sport. And then sure enough, a lot of the esports franchises are moving into more of a sports fandom and traditional at home and away kind of fandom, and like the Overwatch League, for example, which is a global franchise trying to push that sporting position. Again, we kind of call gamers and the community like a silent majority. They don't necessarily need to be out in the same way that sports fans are recognized. So you do need to talk to them with the cultural nuance and the kind of careful nature of,
don't paint their faces.
Yeah, of I'm a brand. I think the really cool thing about esports is, in particular from an Australian perspective, is it's criminally untapped from a talent perspective. There's a lack of an ecosystem. We've got you know, the sparsity of and tyranny of distance versus more professional scenes in other markets. So they're recognizing that commercial brands need to come into the industry. If you do it the right way and leave something there to elevate our ecosystem, you've got a really, really good chance of winning. And that's just being genuine to the gaming community. I think we've got the benefit of platforms like Twitch where you can have a two-way conversation as a brand. So that Pepsi example, there's no reason why Pepsi can't go onto an Australian Twitch channel today and say, hey, we're interested in getting into gaming and esports and we want to hear from you. At eGEN, we do a lot of qualitative research to sort of validate those points, to lead those roadmaps and strategies for brands.
Yeah, cool.
I think just to build on that as well, one of the things, especially when it does come to gaming in particular, is that point of annoyance. And I think it's as much annoyance for the gamer as it is for the brand. So a brand doesn't want to show up in a gaming situation in an in-break or an incentivized or reward space where the consumer just wants to get to the next phase of their game. And it's not an actual value exchange that they're being given back by the brand being there. And I think as well for the gamer, not seeing that same experience play out, whether it's mobile gaming, whether it's esports, making sure that it feels authentic and not annoying is one of the key things that we try to assess when like evaluating any space and making sure that there's a true value exchange and for both the user as well as the inventory itself.
Yeah, interesting. Tom, what do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to build on a few things the other guys are saying. I think the way that I think about the gaming space, and I think it's important that we have a framework in place if we want brands to engage with it properly. And consumer behavior always, you know, is ahead of how we activate in the marketing space. I think that's totally normal with any new channel, and gaming is a channel. But I mean, the way that think about it is, you know, at one end you've got a funnel, and at one end you've got mobile gaming, and you know, any market globally, it's not just Australia, 70 to 90% of the population play mobile games. And I mean, Jamarr's the best example of that. Plays a mobile game, but says, actually, I put myself in the non-gamer category, and that's exactly it. So you've got 70 to 90% of the population where it's just a reach play. You don't need to treat them differently. It's just reach, the same way as you push your ad out on Facebook or YouTube because you get massive reach, consumer eyeballs at scale. So easy. And then kind of moving down that funnel into people with more connection with the gaming space, you've probably got 40 to 50% of the population that actually genuinely game and in some way identify with with gaming culture. And there you start to need to activate a little bit differently. Maybe you're looking at people who are, you know, hardcore console gamers, whatever it is. Next level down, looking 10 to 20% of the population of people engaged with streaming, you know, Twitch, whatever it is. Maybe they stream themselves, so more engaged with gaming content, and their kind of affinity with gaming is stronger. And then right at the, you know, kind of 10% of the population, 5 to 10%, interested in esports. And, you know, when you get to, you know, esports fans, very, very different, strong affinity with gaming, have to be very conscious of who you're talking to and the way that you engage with them. So I think, you know, that's thinking about it in that kind of framework enables you to understand that at one end, you've got just a simple reach opportunity. And at the other end, you've got people who are really, you know, buy into gaming, and it's an important part of their identity. And in between, you've got a spectrum.
Yeah. I think that's quite interesting when you come down the funnel where people more, you know, I identify as a gamer. You know, I'm not down in the esport end, but because I've been gaming my whole life. But what's interesting is, and I mean, Brad, we had a discussion about this the other week, that, you know, the gaming community is actually really positive to brands engaging. Because, and I think, you know, I think a big reason is that I call us we, but we still feel like a subculture. Even though it's really huge, and maybe that's what you were using when you're saying not seen or in the background or whatever it is, that, you know, they're still seen as a subculture. So whenever a brand actually makes an effort to do something that speaks to them, they really appreciate that. And they also feel that, you know, you're enabling my favorite streamer who's, you know, scraping by to keep doing what he's doing. So I think, you know, I saw some study between, you know, sponsored partnership with fashion influencer, where, you know, fashion influencer people are kind of, you know, they don't have that same emotional connection to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a strategy at eGEN called TEAM, which stands for Traditional, Electronic, Action, Sports and Music Combined, because it sucks to be a video gamer that also likes sport, music and entertainment and isn't recognized as the same consumer. And I think the Travis Scott thing in Fortnite's a great example of when music and sport, because you're getting sporting stars that are streaming and making YouTube content out of that, you're getting esports guys doing the same thing. And that ecosystem is there to be able to be flourished from brands, but people are still going, well, we're going to target Brad, the video gamer over there on a pre-roll with Twitch. And then I'm going to target Brad, the AFL viewer on 7 by buying a 30-second ad. And largely the creative is completely different. And it's like, why? I'm still the same person. So if you can get into that ethos, and maybe that's a bit of the metaverse reference that you mentioned in your keynote, Lance, is how do you connect across all of those touch points in a cohesive way? And if you do that, from my opinion, you can break the internet.
Yeah.
Well, that's the hard bit, Brad. So it's interesting you talk to that, because that's probably the difficulty when you've got channels that aren't connected.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what you're talking to is right. Gamers have been treated differently because, and I like Tom's analogy there on how gamers should be broken up, because in mobile, it is broadcast, right? You can use that kind of thinking around actually what I'm doing on a channel 7, channel 9 out of home, and what I do in mobile can almost be similar, right? But when you start moving into console, PC, etc., and start getting down that kind of pointy end of hardcore gaming, I personally believe that those consumers want to be treated differently because of the experience. You know, if you think about why they're gaming, right, it's for entertainment value, it's for all those things that why we all game, and therefore the experience needs to be different, because you need to respect the ecosystem you're going into. You know, a lot of the time when we're consulting the customers that are moving into gaming, it's about just respect the ecosystem that you're moving into, right? The ad needs to form part of the game, right? You're not the game, right? You're not there to kind of intrude in that space. You're there to participate in that escapism or and add value. And so it's not always about giving extra coins and, you know, all those things there. It's about what happens if I buy that billboard? Does that add to reality? Does that actually make the game more believable because I'm streaming the right type of billboard in the right environment, right? And so a lot of the conversations we're having is, when you get into gaming, respect the ecosystem, because if you're making it an unreal experience, actually that actually defeats the purpose and actually doesn't create brand love. And that's what you're trying to do in these spaces.
Yeah. So, I mean, a question for you, Jason, you know, what you guys were talking, what Tom was saying, that, you know, it is just to reach a channel. I mean, in my experience, you know, we've kind of had this really strong gaming position for a little over years. I mean, we've always been in gaming, but about 12 months ago, we realized that, you know, we need to educate the market about gaming, because if nobody does it, they're not going to understand it. And what we found is still a lot of people. Yesterday, we had a home appliance agency, or an agency that looks after a home appliance client. And they came to us for a brief, and they want to do really cool interactive video, which we can do, but they don't want to be in gaming. And so we told them that, well, A, you're not going to get scale outside of gaming. And B, if you want to do really cool interactive video, you know, in-app and gaming is where you need to be. And your audience is mum. Here is data that shows you that pretty much every mum games. And the answer is, the agency got it. And they said, we get it, but we don't think the client, it's not on brand. So, you know, you're selling a fridge or whatever you're selling, it's not on brand. Do we need to redefine what, you know, brand suitability is? Because you hear this a lot where people go, this is not on brand, because again, you know, looking at, you know, the TV ecosystem, and people can do whatever they want. But, you know, how can they very easily feel that something like Maths or, you know, Love Island is on brand when you're trying to sell a fridge, but being in a gaming environment is seen as, you know, sort of less premium. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's that myth dispelling that I was speaking to earlier before, right? Because people think gaming, you know, you got to look at the programmatic ecosystem first, right? Understand that brand safety is a discussion that has been around for 6 or 7 years of the 10 years of programmatic, right? And that's something that continually gets reported on. And whenever there needs to be a new story, it's printed, right? So, you know, someone will find a screenshot. So brand safety is one of those things that you need to put into this thing. And when people think gaming, unfortunately, they always think about first person shooter. Yeah. They think about those environments, right? They don't think about the mass array of gaming that's available to them, right? So I think that's the first thing, that it is about brands entering gaming need to understand what gaming actually is and how it could help them from a reach perspective, but also help them engage. The second one is what audiences are playing. And then that's a brand decision. They've got to make a decision that if mums are playing first person shooter and we can target them because they're streaming, then why should we not be there?
Yeah.
And if we shouldn't because we're being intrusive and creating a bad experience, totally, right? Like no one's going to buy a fridge, right? Let's be honest, right? While they're playing Call of Duty. It just, you know, it's just not in the environment. But if you're doing it through the right games, then it makes sense. So I think that's where the collective agency, yourselves, need to work together to help customers and brands understand that there is a way to play in these spaces. It might just not be the traditional way. And that was the point, you know, Brad and I were making before, which is you just got to respect the audience, like in every channel, and really rethink how a brand needs to operate in those channels. But dispelling that myths of brand safety is one of those critical things for sure.
So, I mean, on that, now I want to hear a couple of other you guys' thoughts on that. But, you know, on that, what I've seen is kind of, people talk about first-person shooter games, and yes, some of them are violent, and, you know, the new type of games like PUBG, Fortnite are, you know, not as violent. But even with the violent ones, people are very, you know, conscious that we often have to exclude verticals of you know, violent games, which, you know, we're happy to do that. But then the same brand can be like, but then you put your Audi into a movie where a guy is literally driving around shooting people with a gun. How is that different? Or maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, or you put your Audi in maths. Which is probably more violent than a lot of the video games. I think there's a distinction between the actual game, and I'm talking more at a gaming content creator and esports side of things, so apologies, but there's a distinction between the game and the player. And the question around premium environments is really interesting because if you were Jeep, who's Juventus's jersey sponsor, if you were to say, hey, thanks to Jeep, we're giving you a mic to listen to Cristiano Ronaldo play on field the entire match. Perceptionally, for me, that's a huge premium environment. It's no different for gamers because they're playing the video game at a competitive or an entertainment level whilst they're streaming. But the consumer, either brought to you by a brand or just passively because that's what happens on platforms like Twitch, are actually having that two-way conversation with them. Now, the interesting part about live sports with no live crowds is it's going to become more brand risky because you're going to hear players swearing at each other. You're going to hear players shouting at each other, shit-canning each other for missing that free kick, because it's already started to happen. The UFC that ran a couple of weeks back, there was no crowd, and what you heard in the ring was very, very intimidating. So I think live sport's going to go through a different machination on brand safety, which is kind of interesting.
I've seen a few of those videos of NFL players where they put a mic in the helmet, and like some of these players, like they talk non-stop while they're playing. But Jamarr, I want to hear some thoughts of what I asked Jason, around kind of the whole brand suitability. Do we need to rethink that framework? Or is gaming, should it sit in sort of a low premium level or low suitability level?
I think it's interesting when we talk about premium, the most kind of common thing that comes up is the actual production value, the content itself. And I think that's usually where the bias tends to sway towards things like maths, despite the actual content itself. The production and the movies can make up for the actual, the things that are happening in them, as opposed to what the games offer. And so I think that especially I think what you showed before of kind of the progress that gaming has had in the quality of the actual games, the visuals, that I think there's a conversation to be had there, but I do ultimately think it just comes down to a basic discussion around the audience. And so if your reach is there, and your audience is there, then it's around discussing kind of where you can be in the right place at the right moment.
Yeah.
So what are the placements within gaming that allow you to still have that clear opportunity to insert your brand and give a true value exchange? Because I think in general, across the gaming space, you have such a core engagement with users. When they're gaming, there's such an emotional connection there that if a brand shows up in the right way in gaming, it's far more impactful and has a better half-life than showing up in kind of a cluttered space as the video landscape currently is.
Yeah. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great discussion. When it comes to brand safety, I think we're all hypocrites. And you only have to look at kind of digital advertising spend and where it goes, 80% to Facebook and Google. User-generated content, I mean, it's difficult to imagine a much more compromised environment from a brand safety perspective than user-generated content. But, I'm a hypocrite too, and I'm comfortable with a little bit of constructive hypocrisy. So, I mean, I think the discussion around shooters, I get that. I get that people don't feel that that's brand safe. And, it's not something that I think we need to take on because, so much of gaming is, we talked about puzzle games, we talked about words with friends. I mean, it's completely 300% non-offensive, brand safe environment. That's what it is. And, honestly, that's the opportunity. Maybe in a few years, we want to kind of have the argument about more compromised first-person shooter environments, but it's just not something that we need to take on right now in gaming.
Yeah. And around the whole brand suitability discussion, do you think there's work to be done there that it's seen as less premium and outside of just the brand safety aspect. Oh, but you are in Asia. No, I was going to say around the brand suitability, but that's quite interesting because we've had lots of discussions around this, and you you keep saying, because I keep bringing it up, and you say because in Asia, gaming is much more accepted. So
well, I think yeah, totally. So I mean, Australia is not in Asia. Well, I mean, maybe it is. It's in Asia Pacific. Yeah, I think Asia, the conversation is slightly different. Gaming is a kind of more normalized part of culture. People are more comfortable with having it as part of their identity. And I think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about identity as people. Yeah. But yes, I mean, it's a slightly different conversation. I think when we have the conversation about brand safety, we often end up having a conversation about premium. And that's not what the conversation about brand safety is. Premium is a different thing. Premium is an accelerator on your brand. You put your brand in a premium environment, there's an accelerator on there because you're associated with a premium environment. Brand safety is about a baseline hygiene factor. Is there damage to my brand from appearing in this environment? And that's very different to premium.
Yeah, absolutely. So conscious a bit about time. So, I mean, I would want to hear from each one of you, you know, what brands are doing it well, or an example of a case study, and kind of what are your predictions of what's going to happen in the gaming and advertising space over the next kind of few years. So if we start with Jason.
Sure. So look, my case study, or the thing I talked about, is probably at that kind of 5% end where we took a traditional sports sponsorship and turned it into an esports streaming opportunity. And we did that a couple of weeks ago through a sponsorship that Lion Dairy has with the St Kilda Football Club. Fantastic result, engaging some of the Twitch streamers, St Kilda, and really putting the brand at the heart. And we saw some really nice engagement, great results, and looking at how we now accelerate that. And I think that's probably the critical thing around the future and what the next kind of, you can't crystal ball too far ahead at the moment. I think anyone wouldn't be very wise to do that. But if you start thinking about it, I think it's the small test. It's that, let's do this the right way. Let's test properly. Let's dabble. It's that whole 70-20-10 rule. Let's take 10% of a budget and throw it at gaming and try a few different things over a good, there you go, over an expanded period of time, and see what we can do and what's possible. Because everyone, like I said, everyone, as soon as they think about gaming, think like you said, Lance, around the movie situation where we've got to integrate. Just like, well, there's so much opportunity to be in gaming. Let's just try it. We might end up in esports. We might end up integration, but that's long term. What we now need to try is short term, follow eyeballs and speak to the right person. So I think the testing, learning and evolving is probably the next thing that's going to happen between now and Christmas.
Yeah. What about you, Jamarr?
Well, you know, my favorite topic when it comes to gaming is the reach opportunity for it. And I think in a world, especially where we're all facing lower budgets, there's more efficiency that's being pressured across kind of clients and in the industry in general. The opportunity that gaming presents to still be that reach channel, and especially I think some of the really powerful stats around older demographics that are still highly engaged, highly reachable in gaming compared to some of the more traditional channels that you'd expect. And I think as digital people, we tend to say that as demographics get older, the opportunity for them in digital tends to decrease, and we have to think about more different channels. And I think gaming opens up a new possibility for us. And so some of the work that we've been doing and the success we've seen in that is ultimately what I think I'm most excited to start to test now that there's a expansion of the audience for gaming more broadly, to really start to get down and segment and understand kind of what is the comparison between VOD versus gaming. What's the opportunities that exist for us to actually understand where those demographics split out, and we can be more impactful and efficient with our budgets.
Yeah. I mean, we've had lots of conversations around, you know, breaking out mobile gaming video as a channel to really start looking at, you know, what does it deliver? How does it compare against the other video channels? So you guys kind of get the tools and the insight to plan properly. But there is a huge opportunity there because you know, most brands still don't have kind of just mobile gaming video as, you know, a hygiene line item, the same way as, you know, we run BVOD on all our campaigns, we run a bit of YouTube, and we run a bit of, you know, mobile video gaming.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head as well up front around social. Like there's this new, we do need to start to think about like how we justify this new cross and multi-channel digital approach, and what those weights look like as more channels begin to kind of emerge in the landscape.
Yeah. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I think we've got a few kind of macro philosophies in the context of this question. I think the first is we're for gamers, not games. So not individually thinking about individual games, more thinking about the gamers and where they go. We kind of call them like reverse dog years. If you're a Fortnite fan, that doesn't mean you're going to be a fan for 7 years. It means probably 7 minutes. And there's a lot of flippancy on game fandom. So I think from our perspective, when brands are thinking about doing things, and I'll take you through a case study, one of my favorites is Monster, it's create your own intellectual property, no matter what that is, but stand for something within the community and stick on that and continue to build that up and scale that up over time. And Jason mentioned that perfectly, is you don't have to dump $750,000 into an IP fee and a broadcast sponsorship in gaming and esports, because it's teeny in this market, and you can build that up and scale that up over time and then start to blend that with your more mass media vehicles that you normally market through. And Monster did an excellent job of this 24 months before they got to a point of maturation in the esports community, and they took 4 steps. The first was start talking to the community as Monster. So we're Monster, we're interested in video games. We've always been in motocross and extreme sports, but we actually like video games. Now, of course, everybody would say energy drinks and video games connect, but the philosophy can stay the same. The next thing they did was let content creators do the talking for them. So Monster fridges in the back of their Twitch streams, sponsored logos talking about the stream being brought to you by Monster. And then they moved into the professional scene because they had a bit of credence in the community. So they started sponsoring some of the best esports teams and the biggest esports events. And I love that kind of pensive, you know, thought well over time, built up, and then started to look at it at a real geographical level. So they said, we need to be in China. So they started aligning with League of Legends. We need to be in Southeast Asia. We're aligning with Dota. And it's that really kind of planned, well thought out structure, I think, is the best way to go. Just listen to the community and build up over time.
Yeah. Quite interesting. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, a quick one. I think, you know, gaming, really interesting space for brands. I think it looks a lot like sports, but we probably overlay it with the discipline of social media because, you know, we come from a kind of digital sort of marketing background as marketers. That's what we overlay it with. But yeah, so I mean, you know, at one end of sort of sports and social media, you've got brands who are deeply engaged with the channel. You know, maybe they're sponsoring a sports team, they're working really closely with influencers. So you've got brands who just, you know, immerse themselves in that. You know, it becomes a big part of their identity as a brand. And then at the other end, you've got, you know, brands who just use it, as Jason was talking about, and Jamarr as well, as a broadcast opportunity. So tons of brands, you know, run ads around sport because you get a massive audience. Tons of brands. Most money, as we said, is spent on Facebook and YouTube, not because brands are deeply engaged in social media, but just because they spend on Facebook and YouTube because they can get a ton of eyeballs in one place with good targeting. So, yeah, I mean, brands at one end completely immersed, want to get involved. At the other end, just using it as a reach opportunity. I think that's the way it kind of plays out.
Yeah. All right, I'm conscious of time. We've gone over quite a fair bit because all you had quite interesting things to say. But yeah, so I want to say thank you to all of you in the panel for being here and everyone that joined. And I think, you know, moving forward for gaming, I urge anyone to look at what the metaverse is. But I think what's very clear is that, you know, the advancements of gaming is just going to keep going. And, you know, things around AR and VR, we haven't even seen the start of it. And a big thing around gaming as well is that pop cultural dominant force is going to drive it even further forward. So, I mean, again, now it's going to sound like I'm a maths basher. I've never seen an episode, but from what I understand is, you know, when something has, you know, enough of a baseline of viewers and it becomes that water cooler thing, there's probably a big percentage of people that will watch it because they want to be part of the cultural movement. They want to be part of the water cooler. And that is kind of happening within gaming now. So if you're, you know, a bunch of young kids, you're 10 kids, and 7 of you play Fortnite, 2 play Call of Duty, and 1 doesn't play at all, you know, the 2 that play Call of Duty will start playing Fortnite because they want to be part of the movement. The one that doesn't game at all, he will start playing that as well. And the same thing when we saw, you know, when Words with Friends came out for more adult people. So, you know, gaming is very fast becoming the dominant force of kind of the cultural conversation. So, you know, if you're an omnipresent brand like Coke or, you know, these big global brands you can find anywhere, the question is, you know, how long can you not have the same dominant presence within gaming, whether it is a pre-roll on Twitch, or if it's a recorded video on mobile gaming, or if it's, you know, doing an integration with Fortnite. So with that, thank you all very, very much. And thanks to everyone that sat over 20 odd minutes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.